Hey guys, with all the hype around SORA2 and particular the image to video generation capabilities, I've been seeing a lot of workflows coming out at the moment around automating this, and probably a few things that I've seen is that while they provide a really good base, they are often quite finicky and require a lot of annoying input from us. And so what I've done is I've taken a workflow that I saw from Nate Herc, and basically what I've done and I'll be going through today is how I've probably taken it up another level to reduce the amount of things like image links you need to save, and giving you a little bit more control over the actual video itself. So what we're going to do is run through step by step with each node, exactly what I've done, the changes that I've made, and how I feel that this is streamlining or improving the overall process. And I'll also have this workflow available for you guys to download through my GitHub, which will be linked in the description. I'll also have a video to Nate's, a link to Nate's original video on this one, because I want to make sure he gets a shout out for this one, because he obviously put a lot of the hard work in terms of creating the base around this, and what I've done is just tinkered and refined it. So first thing that I did was I created a node at the start, or I set up a node at the start, rather than just being, say, I see a lot of them being manual executions or scheduled, is to actually work off a custom form. So what I'll do is I'll just execute this step and then I'll show you what I've done. So first thing that I've done within here is gives you the functionality to upload an image. So rather than having to stuff around uploading your image to a Google Drive and then making it available via the public URL and then getting the URL and then pasting or hard coding it into one of the nodes, what we do here is we just grab the file that we want. And so the one that I'm going to grab is just not that one, is just one of this coffee cup. The next one I've got in here is just a text input that you provide, which basically is just the style of how you want this product or video to be displayed. So I've just got a really basic prompt or basic input that it will then build upon as the workflow works through it itself. So for the style or this input, I've just got a young woman picks up the cup and holds it to the camera, saying how workflow automation coffee is the best. And then the next one as well that I've noticed is that I haven't seen a really good way of setting the aspect ratio, so either to landscape or portrait, and this can often change depending on the type of product or the type of video that you're trying to make. So for this one, I'm going to do landscape. So what I'll do is I'll hit submit, and then what we'll see is some information basically come through into this new node that's only recently become available on N8N called Cloudinary. So there's something that I've used for other projects, and I run through the credentials, setting it up, how it all works as well in this video. But it's been a bit of a game changer, particularly when it comes to using public URLs that our AI agents and that our API calls, our HTTP requests can use as well. So if you haven't already, just make sure you've uploaded to the newest instance of N8N, and you should have this if you're using the cloud version. If you're using a self-hosted version, then you'll just need to search for it in here. And what you should see is it'll just basically ask you to install it. Once it's installed, you'll be able to use it. So what we've got is upload asset to Cloudinary. So what we're going to do is we're going to be uploading a resource. The operation is going to be upload file. The file is going to be called this here, so upload_image. The resource is going to be image, and then what you can do is add an additional field and choose the folder if you want to have it uploaded to a specific folder within your Cloudinary platform. And so the folder that I want it uploaded to is called SORA2. And what I'll do now is basically run through setting up your credentials for Cloudinary and having that flexibility to select the folder that you want as well. So if you haven't signed up for Cloudinary, you need to do that first. It is free to do, and the free plan is really generous and should be more than enough for what you need. Once you've signed up and you've created a project, you'll need to come down to assets, and then once you're in assets, select folders. And then what you can see here is I've got a few different folders. So I made one just called SORA2. You can make a new folder just by clicking the create folder button up here. So once you've done that, you can then come back to N8N, and then just in the folder, just make sure that it matches exactly the folder that or the name that you've given to the folder in your project. The next thing you're going to need to do is set up the API credentials. So what I'll do is I'll actually just delete this one and start fresh. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a new credential, and we're going to come back to Cloudinary, and what we're going to do is go down to settings. We're going to get API keys, and the first thing you want to grab just up here is just where it says cloud name. So I'm just going to copy that, come back to the cloud name, pop that in here. The next thing we're going to need to do is generate an API key. So when you generate an API key, it will basically send you a confirmation email with a two-factor code that you'll need to enter. And so I'll just quickly try and enter this now. Cool, so that's worked, and we can see we've got a new key up here. What I'm going to do is just change that to test so that we can just clearly define what it's used for. Or for example, you can see I've got one set up here as SORA2 to specifically use with SORA. So we've got a couple of things here. We've got our API key, so we'll need to just come over and click that to copy. We can come back, paste that into here, and then with our API secret, what we need to do is just really simply come back and click the little I here. It will expand to show our API secret. We'll copy that and then paste that into here. So we'll hit save, and then what we should see is that it should say connection tested successfully, and we can then move on to the next step. So this is now all set up and ready to go, and if we come back to schema, what we can actually see is all the information that we popped in before. So we've got our style, which we'll use in a later node, and then our aspect ratio, but most importantly, we've got our binary file. So when we execute this step, it'll just take our image and it will upload it to our folder or in Cloudinary. And the main thing that we're looking for here is just the, where is it? Just down here, the URL. So if I come back to Cloudinary and I go to assets and I go to the relevant folder, what we will see is that we actually have now that file uploaded. Seems like it's being a little bit slow at the moment, so just give it a moment, or maybe we'll just try going home. Cool, so now we're in our folder and we can see we've got this file uploaded. So traditionally what we would have to do after manually uploading this file or our picture to Cloudinary is to then right click on it and copy the URL and then either hard code it into one of the nodes or put it into a Google spreadsheet or an Airtable, whatever you use. But now what we can see is we've got this URL here instead, so it's uploaded it and provided us with this public URL that we need in order to be able to change or create a video out of this image using SORA2. So in the next node that I've got here, which I'll execute while I'm talking about it, is just a set ID one. So essentially this will be used later in the workflow, but what I'm doing is just setting some of the key values that we're going to be utilizing later on so that we can really easily use them as an expression. So the first one we've got is the image URL. So all we do is just come down to URL here and we'll just drag that into here. All of this will be set up and ready to go for you guys anyway, so you don't actually have to worry about it. In product style, that's again just one of the, I guess, the information that we put in earlier in the custom form. So it's just going to be this information here. And then the aspect ratio is just whether we want it as landscape or portrait. So the next step is to just analyze the image. So this one potentially isn't required, but I just prefer to use them. I think that sometimes providing written visuals of the image as well can help improve the quality of the prompt that's generated for us. So I've just put a really basic text input or system message here. Again, it will be included, so you don't need to worry about it. And then the URL, because it does require a public URL in order to analyze the image, just comes from the set node here. So we've got the image URL here. The next thing that we've got here is our AI agent, and a couple of things in terms of setting this up. So in terms of the prompt or the user message, I've just basically given it or just emphasized the things it should be looking at when making or deciding on what the prompt should be. And then within the system message, it's a little bit more detailed, but breaks it down in terms of providing the input sources of information, the task, and then some really specific instructions, particularly around how to sort of set up the scene. So we've got the main subjects, the environment, the camera, and then the lighting and the tone and atmosphere. And then just some structure in terms of how we want it to basically output the prompt that we'll then be using. So I'll run that really quickly, and what we'll see is once it's finished running there, that we can move on to our next node, which is this one here. So what we can see in here is we're making a post request to this site here. So we're using KIE.AI in order to set up or to post this request and get this actioned. So what I'll do is just really quickly run through with you how to set up your credentials for this one as well. So I'll just delete this because again, this was just another one that I made. But what I'll do is I'll click, you'll need to go header auth if it's not already set up, but it should. Or sorry, I should say firstly with authentication, credential type, generic, header auth. And then we'll need to actually create a new credential. So in terms of the name, you're just going to set that as authorization. The value, which is going to be your API key, you'll need to go to KIE.AI in order to get. So all you need to do in KIE.AI is just come down to settings. Once you're in settings, go to API keys. This is an old one that I made from a test, so I'll delete that one, but you just want to create an API key. So we'll call this one 1234. And then what you do is you'll get this here. So you just want to copy this code, save it if you need to, come back to N8N, and what you can do is change this to an expression so you can see it, and then you just need to go bearer space your API key. So pretty basic to set up and pretty easy to set up, which is great. So now that we've done that, I'm just going to change this to key123. And we can see we've got key123 here. Within the body parameters, and again, this will all be set up for you. You won't need to change any of this. The only thing you'll need to do is your credential. We'll expand this, and there's a few things that we're going to look at here. So what we're basically doing is sending to KIE.AI the model we want to use, the callback URL. So I'll go through why I have that in there in a little bit, but it's basically to do with polling and just trying to reduce the number of requests that we're making. We've got our input. So with our input, we've got our prompt. And then we've got our image URL, and then we've got our aspect ratio, and then we've got the number of frames or seconds that we want the video to be, and then the remove watermark true, so that we don't have the SORA watermark on our videos. So I do just really quickly want to come back to this expression here. It looks pretty interesting, but essentially the purpose of this is to remove some of the symbols or quotation marks or commas or the spaces that will actually cause KIE.AI to error. So for example, if we look back at the output for our AI agent here, we can see that there's things like double quotation marks, and so here and there as well. These are some of the symbols that will cause errors, because you can see when we're sending this information to KIE.AI, there's already double quotation marks here, and having additional ones within it will basically cause it to get very confused and generally error. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly run this, and just while that step's running there, what I thought would be good was just to go over to KIE.AI and just show you a couple of things here. So when you go to KIE.AI, you can go to the marketplace, which you can do by clicking up here and go to markets. This is a paid, I guess, feature, or you need to pay to use this, but it's significantly cheaper. You can see here it's 15 cents for a 10-second video without watermark. So absolute peanuts, which is great. While you're getting used to it, and if you're wanting to understand more about the JSON structure that you need to provide, what I found was really helpful was to basically set up how I want my video to run through the playground here. So obviously at the moment I'm on text to video, but I want to do image to video. So for example, if I wanted to utilize the prompts and the images that I use for this example, what I could do is come in here and just paste in my prompt, remove my video, remove the default one that's there, and then add the image that I want to use if I can find it. Cool, so I've added that in here. Leave it as landscape because I want it to be landscape. The number of frames or the time, so set it to 10, and then the watermark removed. So this is essentially how I have it set up at the moment. And then if we come to JSON and click that, we can see pretty much exactly how we want our JSON request to look. Because if we come back to here and we look at this, we can see it's pretty much the same. The only addition is that I've got the callback URL in here. And instead of hard-coded values, we have our expressions. So really helpful if you're trying to learn or get a bit of a sense of how to send these requests using JSON rather than other methods. And particularly when you're learning with KIE.AI as well, that it can be a little bit complicated. But if you're starting off with this and you take this and you put it into, say, ChatGPT, it will be a much easier process for you to troubleshoot or to work through creating exactly what you need to create in order to send that information as JSON. You can also come into the API tab here, and basically if you run through everything here, it will provide you with examples of the body structure as well as the required and the optional parameters that you can send as well. So you see that just the actual one that I have here is this callback URL, which all I did was just copy that, paste it in, and then change this hard-coded string optional to this expression that I have in here. And so this expression will generate automatically. You see at the moment it says filled at execution time, but it will generate automatically when I execute the workflow or when you guys execute the workflow. So now that that's done, what we'll do is we'll move on to the next step. So this next step is pretty straightforward. It's basically just an if to make sure that that it started working and that it's actually running. Because what I was finding and doing some other testing was that the workflow would continue to run and it would basically just get stuck in a loop of checking if the video was successful or not. Because of just some of the ways that KIE.AI erroring works. So now that that's worked, it will move on to our wait node here, or our wait step. If it was to fail, it will come down here and stop the workflow and give us an error message for our workflow. So with my wait node here, I've tried to reduce the number of times that we're, I guess, sending requests to KIE.AI. It's more so just a good practice, particularly if you're working with services that will charge you per API call or per request. So rather than just using a normal wait node, what I've done is I've used resume on webhook call. You can leave everything else exactly as it is. Again, all those settings will be set up for you in the workflow. But yeah, so rather than waiting a set period of time, what it's doing is waiting until it basically gets told, which it does through this line here, that the video is ready and the video is done. So because I'm running through this step by step, I'll actually need to skip this, but we'll do a full run through at the end. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually deactivate this and then just pin the rest of this to make sure it works. And what I'm going to do is move on to the next one, which is the get video. So again, you won't need to fill anything out here, but just make sure that the method set to get, the URL is this here. You just need to select your KIE.AI credentials again, and then it's going to use the field below in terms of the query parameters. So it's going to grab the task ID, and it's just basically going to be checking to make sure that the task is completed. And because it's been quite a fair bit of time, it's been almost 20 minutes now, it should work straight away. But in my testing, what I've found is that it usually takes about 2 to 3 minutes. So what we can see is a few things here. So now that that's executed, we can see it was successful. The state is success. And so we can move on to this next one, which is just a switch route. So again, the purpose of this is trying to avoid getting stuck in those loops, which I have experienced while doing some testing. So what I've got is a switch node that will either pass it if it's successful. If it errors, it will come down and stop the workflow. Or if the response here, so in the state, is still generating, it will come back down and check again. But because of this wait node here, it shouldn't ever need to go down and check again, and potentially is it's an error rather than actually the way that it's supposed to be. So what you can do as well is when it says on error, you could also go continue or continue using error. You could also retry on fail and set a maximum number of tries if you wanted to, and then after that it would just stop the workflow so that you're not just consistently sending requests. So I'll just quickly execute this one here, and then what we should see is it goes through the success pathway, which it has. And then what we've got is our final node, which is a set node where we're just setting the URL to one that we can essentially copy and paste. So we can see we've got our URL in here, but if we were to take that and try and copy and paste it into a browser, it wouldn't work. So we'll execute that. And what we should see in the output of this is our final link to our video. So if we paste that in there, it will download it automatically, and we'll have a quick look to see what it looks like. Cool. So not fantastic, but not terrible either. What I think we'll do now is just another run through using exactly the same prompt and images, just so we can kind of see really quickly, and I'll provide you with a quick update of how quick it was to basically go from start to finish. So what I'll do is I'll just reactivate this and we'll execute the workflow. So I'll just go in and choose the same file as I did before. I'll use, oops, I don't need that. I will use the same prompt that I used before, and I'll use the same aspect ratio. So now we'll see it's working through. At the moment it's uploading, now it's setting the IDs, it's analyzing the image, and then once that's done, it'll pass all that information on to our AI agent. And what I'll show you as well is while this is working through, if ever you're unsure about whether or not your video is working or your workflow is working, we can actually come to KIE.AI, and if we go to the logs, what we can see is it's running. So we can see these other ones were successful in around 180, 150. This one here a little bit longer, 190. But what you could see earlier on, I was doing all these tests and it just kept failing. But that was actually something with KIE.AI. It wasn't to do with our workflows or anything. So now we're just waiting for this to finish. And what we should see at the moment, it's at 1 minute. When it's around sort of the 2 to 3 minute mark, we should see the workflow automatically continue on. So what I'll do is I'll skip forward to when it finishes, so you're not sitting here waiting for it. Cool. So what you can see is that now went straight through, and so it was quite a long time in terms of, you can see it was where are we, 744. Oh no, that wasn't right. It was about 5.5 minutes for that to work, so that was probably on the longer end, but then for the rest of it to work was really quick. So it's now obviously gone through, it's checked, we've seen that the state was success, and then we've moved on, and again it's confirmed success, so it's now moved into the final step to give us our URL. So all in all, it took about 6 minutes or a bit less than 6 minutes to run through that, which is pretty solid. So that was certainly a interesting run through. Definitely was not the best that I've ever seen. I'll show you guys some examples, or an example of another one that I did yesterday, which worked a little bit better. I think it was this one here. And there was another one as well from yesterday too, which if I can't find it. Must have, oh no, this one here.
I've tried a lot of coffees, but Workflow Automation Network coffee, it's on another level. Smooth, energizing, and just what you need to power through your busiest work days.
So you can see the results are still mixed, and I think that if you work on really refining the prompt agent further, you'll get a better result. But what you can see is that we were able to work through this whole flow in about 6 minutes, and again, we were able to save some time and just improve the overall flow of it through adding in just a simple couple of nodes. So it was really just the custom form and then the use of Cloudinary in order to get that public URL. And then rather than using I guess a traditional polling method of just spamming the API every 5 or 10 seconds, we utilize that wait node, and which will wait for it to basically get confirmation before continuing. So hopefully you guys found this one helpful, and just shows you that you can really build these out even further. And yeah, if you have any questions, or you'd like any more detail or any other sort of videos that are similar to this one, let me know in the comments. Or if you want to, you can reach out. I've got my email and link to my website in the description as well. In the meantime, yeah, let me know your thoughts. And yeah, we'll see you in the next one.